In January of this year, Woodward describes this in a lot of detail, page after page after page, reconstructing the dialogue between Trump and John Dowd as they rehearsed questions that Trump would face should he sit for an interview with Mueller. And the whole point of that, in Woodward's telling, is for Dowd to convince Trump that he's not fit to be a witness, that he would explode, tell mistruths, create problems for himself, commit perjury, were he to sit down and answer those questions from Mueller. There are other scenes as well, though, involving Dowd and the president, negotiations in March with the special counsel leading up to Dowd's eventual resignation as the president's personal lawyer. One thing we should point out, Nicole, John Dowd has put out a statement in the last few minutes denying that any practice session occurred and denying a couple other examples in the book. It's unclear sort of who's telling the truth here. I know that Woodward explains in his book that he's recorded a lot of the interviews he conducted. The account in Woodward's book is based on hundreds of hours of interviews with firsthand sources, as well as diary notes, government documents, other materials like that. So I guess that'll be worked out in the days to come. But John Dowd is contesting some of the characterization here.
Mike Schmidt, Phil Rucker just gave us two dates. This January 27th alleged encounter with the president where they have a practice session, and this March 5th interaction between John Dowd, the president's lawyer, Jay Sekulow, a lawyer who's still on board, and the special counsel and his deputy, James Quarles. There's some conversation that's in here in Phil's story. Dowd explains to Mueller and Quarles why he was trying to keep the president from testifying. Quote, "I'm not going to sit here and let him look like an idiot. And you publish that transcript because everything leaks in Washington. The guys overseas are going to say, I told you he was an idiot. I told you he was a goddamn dumbbell. What are we dealing with this idiot for?" "John, I understand," Mueller replied, according to Woodward. It's the first time I've ever seen special counsel Robert Mueller quoted in a news story. You've done a lot of reporting on this period of time. What in here remains a concern to the president's legal team?
Well, I mean, first of all, just in terms of the attacks or Dowd denying that, we've looked at that issue. We've looked at gone back and reported on some of this stuff, and the account is accurate. This is really what went on. This is what the interaction really looked like, and Dowd now trying to walk away from it. And this is pretty great detail. It actually brings Mueller to life for us. But this was a really important time in March between the special counsel's office and the president's lawyers. They really realized at that point the full extent of the questions that Mueller wanted to ask the president about. And Dowd was trying to do everything he could to try and stop Mueller. And as we see in this anecdote, it was pretty confusing.
Joyce, we also have seen that the special counsel's office shared all of the areas that they wanted to talk to the president about. So if they had a practice session, I understand that's in dispute at this hour. We've got all the reporters on who could clarify that. So if they get anything new on that, we'll break into regular programming. But Joyce, it seems like the special counsel's office did everything in their power to disclose everything that they may possibly want to cover with the president. We know where we are now, where an interview does not seem to be in the cards from Rudy Giuliani and the president's current legal team. Do you think a subpoena at this point is inevitable?
The subpoena question is still an interesting one, and it probably turns more on whether Mueller has the appetite to litigate that issue on appeal. But what's really remarkable here, as you point out, the prosecutors bent over backwards to make this process accessible for the president's team. And that's what good prosecutors do. They don't play gotcha in these sort of interviews. They let folks know what's on the table, and they sit down and have an open and an honest conversation with them. One reason that we may see this rapid denial from John Dowd, whether he was a source or whether he wasn't a source, though, is that I'm astonished to see a lawyer for a client being on record as having told prosecutors that his client was a liar. In essence, that his client had and would continue to commit perjury. That puts Dowd's license to practice in some sort of question. Seems like a really unusual step for a defense lawyer to take. So I'm not surprised that we saw this quick denial from him.
Phil Rucker, I have been on the receiving end of 3 Bob Woodward books for the president for whom I served. They all came after 9/11 and after the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were underway. And Bob Woodward is a lot of things, but he is also someone whose reporting is usually spot on and usually proves out. What are you struck by when you see the White House response, where they basically describe the accounts in your colleague's book as the product of disgruntled former employees? I mean, there are accounts about Secretary Mattis, who's anything but a disgruntled former employee, about General Kelly, who at this hour is very much still on the job. There are accounts from people who are anything but disgruntled former employees.
I think, Nicole, the White House is struggling to figure out exactly how to deal with this book. It took several hours, more than 3 hours, for that statement to come out, and they're not actually refuting any of the details that Bob Woodward is reporting, with the one exception of Kelly now saying that he never called the president an idiot. He is quoted in Bob Woodward's book, and he had been quoted in some previous news reports, including by NBC News, to have called the president an idiot behind his back. So, with the exception of that, they're not disputing things. I'm not even sure the White House has its hands on a copy of the book. As of an hour or so ago, they did not. And so they're a little caught off guard here to try to figure out how to do the damage control. It's not the same as Omarosa's book or Michael Wolff's book, because of the stature that Bob Woodward has, because of his reputation as being a chronicler of presidents for 40 years now, and the meticulous way in which he goes about his reporting. They can't so easily say he's a